Hey, everybody, you're listening to and possibly watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz,
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
and we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in or possibly stream in. You'll notice that there's 4 of us in the picture and not 5, so we are thrilled to welcome back to the show one of our favorite guests, the koala of comics, our Aussie Bear operative, David Hazan, the scribe of Nottingham, and many other projects. If you can hear me, I'm not as boisterous as I usually am at the intro, and that's because I'm sick. So these guys are gonna have to take the Jesus take the wheel. You can take the wheel on this one, but I'm gonna be around. I'll be chiming in. But I have to preserve the voice. I apologize, David. That's going to be the case tonight. But I'm probably going to still keep yapping more than I should. So, so Steve, why don't you take the lead there?
All right. Well, like I said, like Bill's mentioned, we have had Mr. David Hazan on several times before on our show, and every time it's always a delight. So if you'd like to, you could go back into our archives and listen to all the wonderful times that he has visited us before. But for this time, he's got a couple things that he wanted to talk about with us. And, but first, before we go into that, we'll do a quick sort of reintroduction for those listeners or viewers who haven't heard of Dave before or are just finding out about David Hazan's work, and ask him a couple brief questions about what got you into comics.
Well, a couple of very patient colleagues who got very sick of me talking about comics related media without having read the source material and just started shoving books in my hands. And next minute I was sort of tumbling down the rabbit hole, and I have a very obsessive personality. So once I know I love something, I like to know how it works. Next minute I had a career in comics.
So you're saying it's more of like it's an adult onset comics addiction.
Yes. Absolutely. I guess unlike many of my peers, I feel, but so I'm still playing catch up. Like, I was asking a couple of fellow creators, like, after watching this week's X-Men 97, no spoilers, I was like, where do I start with this? And I feel like as a queer comics fan, it's so shameful to admit that, like, I haven't read that much X-Men. So I was like, where do I start? General consensus was apparently either like the Morrison New X-Men stuff or like Giant Size #1 in the Claremont stuff. And I still haven't quite decided where I want to go with that, but we'll see. We'll see where this weekend takes me.
I'd also throw in the Astonishing X-Men run. That's even if you haven't read all of the Claremont stuff. There's a lot in the Astonishing X-Men run that holds its own.
Noted.
Yeah.
My reading list just keeps expanding.
Yeah, I will second that with Caleb. It's a good primer.
Yeah.
For more how the characters interact with each other. I as problematic a creator as he is, he stuck to the landing on that one. So yeah, I'd second that.
Yeah. Well, there's always more.
Before we get into talking about your work and stuff, David, you've been on the show long enough and so many times that you're basically just family now. So before we start talking about the actual work you're doing, how are you, man? How is life treating
you? Mostly great. I don't. God, when was the last time I was on here though?
It was about a year ago.
A hot minute.
I was going to say 6 months, but it's probably been longer than that.
Yeah, I mean, generally been doing great. Just trying to balance, day job life and trying to turn in scripts. That's basically, the tightrope walk of my entire life, since I started doing this. I suppose, yeah, I've had a chance to hang out with Bill a couple of times since I was last on here, which has been cool. And sorry for shaming you two, Steve and Caleb, for not New York, but I gotta be very picky about which conventions I go to. San Diego this year, by the way.
Nice. Congratulations.
I'm so excited. And hopefully they'll do like another book announcement in a few weeks that will be around that sort of time. So fingers crossed that all lines up, because that will be very cool to have like a book just coming out at the same time that I'm doing my first San Diego. So it's all very exciting. Everything just
exciting.
kind of like life is just the, like the comics treadmill, the freelancer treadmill, the side hustle treadmill is all one big cosmic, running act for a large person who does not like to run.
That's awesome. And actually, I could give you an exact number when you were last on. You were last on April 30th, 2023, with Lucas Catoni.
Of course.
To promote Death Drop Jag Assassin at that point. So yeah, that was almost exactly a year ago.
Which I loved, by the way.
Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Yep. Hopefully we get to finish it, but I won't say too much more about that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad that you've got more trips planned back here. I know it's a bit of a flight, when you have to get all the way up here to the US, but I'm glad you're able to maximize your time while you're here, which is wonderful. Sadly, I wasn't able to make it up.
That's what I'm trying to do. Hey, Bill, are you doing FlameCon? Not to like make you speak.
I don't know. I've hosted panels there in the past. With Chris Cummins. I've hosted panels there in the past. Maybe it always comes in August and it's so hot. And there's certain people I don't enjoy running into that are regulars there. But at the same token, there's people that I love to see. So maybe.
Well, my projected trajectory will I think take me there, given that like the rough timing of my trip. So hopefully I'm gonna get there, because you're right, there are a lot of cool people who are gonna be there too, and it looks like a ton of fun. So I'm about it.
Yeah, I've missed the last two, but I'm not precious about it.
It's a show that I haven't been able to go to yet, but it's definitely on my list. I want to go. I always enjoy seeing or reading the articles and stuff that tend to come out, because you do get a lot of niche queer creators, and there are some good panels that come out of there. So it's always fun if you follow like some of the underground. Like we'll talk about it when people have been there, but also groups like Graphic Policy and stuff put out really good articles when they're talking about doing panels and stuff. It's always fun. I've never been though. It's always high on my list. We three of us, I do think, are going to get to converge. Not this month, but next month. We're all going to be at Heroes. 2 months. June. Yeah, June. So almost like a month from the day, right? Or
2 months.
2 months.
2 months.
Yeah.
Next week. Yeah.
2 months from next week.
I don't know what month it is. It's pollen season.
I always hear
I probably could buy my airfare, right?
I did today. So I booked mine today. But looking forward to that.
I always hear great things about Heroes Con and Terrificon as well, and I'm like, ooh,
Yeah,
there's
I'd
so
like to
many
do
conventions
Terrificon.
that
It's not too far from me, and that's a show that it's just built up and up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would like to do that at some point. David, I can also say one show that would be great if you could ever go to is Baltimore Comic Con. Couple of
if
us.
I ever get nominated for a Ringo, I'll be there.
Let's pull some strings.
We'll see if we can't make that happen.
Yeah, and let's when we were mentioning FlameCon, let's give a hope at some point that they revive the Queers in Comics conference. Hasn't happened since 2019, but that was the best queer experience I've had with comics. But some of the main people behind that have passed away or basically retired, and so hopefully they'll revive that, because that's one I know we all would have a great time on. Absolutely great time.
Yeah.
Like on a college. A Comic-Con at the same time. It was great. College
Con. Ooh. It's like a career fair, but you want to be there.
Your mind is a scary place. So let's talk about some of the books that you're actually working on.
So scary.
Days, man. I know, like, yeah. So you've been a busy fella, and you've got
I've been a busy little bee, you're so right.
What all you got happening over in the comics world?
Couple things that I can't talk about, but at the moment it's like full steam ahead on Nottingham. Like, I'm done. I finished. Like, I dotted the I's and crossed the T's on issue 15, and like kind of we're out. I like roughly 10 pages of inks left for Shane to do. So that's kind of terrifying still.
Because that's been like a 3-year project.
Realistically 5 years.
Okay.
So I started writing it in 2019, and it's now 2024. Like, these pandemic years have kind of stolen, gaps in time for us. And I can't believe it's been 5 years.
Right.
Almost.
Wild.
In like October, it'll be 5 years of professionally writing comics, I guess, which is wild to me. The amount of hair on my head since the first time I did this, significantly less. As I sit here talking to 3 men with full heads of hair, how dare you?
But your beard is really full, so
that's true. But like, I feel like sometimes I ask the question, "Are you even a bear if you don't like buzz your head?" But we'll.
Well, look, you're talking to somebody who functionally I cannot grow a beard, and I'm on a bear podcast. So at least you got that going for you. Like, you've got more hair on your head than I have hair on my face. So
I've got more hair on my fingers than you have on your face.
we can just hate these two together because they got the whole package. I just got fucked over genetically.
Listen, I got a face to get stopped in airports, so I think I got your feet on that one.
Oh, yeah. But that's, I mean, with you were talking about it, like, just over the past 5 years, almost, there's been a lot of obviously a lot of changes in the industry. A lot of things have happened. But one thing that's really been really consistent is just the reception of, I mean, we could talk about Nottingham right now. Like, the reception of Nottingham is fantastic, and I know I've been reading it. We've been reading it since the first issue, and as of, I believe it was yesterday, Wednesday, April 10, issue number 11 came out. So the start of the third full arc. Not including Tales of Nottingham, that kind of, has
all of my little spin-off projects.
And the free comic book day issues and stories, and
bits and pieces.
Which are great,
Had such a good
but-
time working on the little one shots and the little shorts. They're so much fun. It's kind of weirdly freeing to just be like, I've got this little like 10 or 20 page thing. What do I want to like do with it rather than contributing to this like huge overarching monstrosity that this series has become. It's kind of wild to me that this was my first book, and we're on issue 11 of 15. Really, this doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen anymore. And I'm still confused, but excited. Like notionally, I understand why the book is a success. But just like trying to reconcile that with the imposter syndrome is sometimes really hard.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you first conceptualized it, did you? So was this like a situation you're like, oh no, I've definitely got 15 issues, right? Like I want the story to go, but I'll work on like the first 5. Like we'll do an arc and see how it does. Or was it like no, like you said, this doesn't happen. Most creators like you'll get a 4-issue, 5-issue, maybe 6-issue series, and that's where it goes. And if you're lucky, it does become a some type of phenomenon. It's very successful, and you'll get that extended arc. How did you first conceptualize this? Was it just kind of a smaller story, and once you realized that those numbers were there, that you were able to like broaden it, or did you plant those seeds as you were going with the hope that it would be able to bloom and become something else?
I knew it had the legs.
Yeah.
Like I knew it could go for effectively as long as I and Mad Cave wanted it to go. When I was writing about issue 3 or 4, realistically, I was like, "Ooh, like we could do this, and we could do this, and we could do this, and we could do this." I don't know that I planted much of the seeds of that then, because anytime I'm looking for story ideas for this, generally what I'm doing is Wikipedia history deep dives. And I feel like that's kind of where almost all of my ideas for like changes in status quo for the series come from. Because like obviously between volume 1, which is sort of a more like straightforward kind of set dressing for the Robin Hood tale, and then like obviously between that and volume 2 where King Richard gets kidnapped and ransomed, there's a change in status quo. And then again for volume 3 when we're looking at the siege of Nottingham, where Richard comes back and is trying to take England back from his brother, there's obviously that other status quo change. And so it's just like finding little bits in the history to sort of hit the refresh button on what we're trying to do, in a way that hopefully people find cool and interesting. And so I kind of knew from about December of 2019 that I was like, oh, it would be really cool to have Nottingham under siege and have the sheriff be the sort of like this embattled cop in a city that's like being besieged, but there's stuff going on inside as well as outside. And it kind of, I was like, it's a great way to make the story both epic and intimate, by like pushing all these characters in an enclosed space, and having them sort of be under pressure from without and within.
Wow. That's what.
So
Okay.
it was kind of there.
Right, yeah.
I kind of knew what I wanted to do. If I was, and I remember having a conversation with my Kickstarter collaborator, fellow writer Christoph Borges, about this like specific thing. Going, ooh, like I have like a couple ideas for like future arcs, and he was like, buddy, do not get ahead of yourself. Do not get ahead of yourself. I was like, I know, but it'd be cool. Hell yeah. and here we are in 2024 doing the thing.
Well, I can certainly understand the advice from a practical perspective, not to get ahead of yourself, but at the end of the day, it's a weird thing to tell a creator, right? Like it's a weird thing. Like as a writer, your job is to dream, right? Your job is to channel dreams into something functional, right? So that's what you're meant to do. Is you're meant to dream big. You're meant to think about these large. But again, I understand from the numbers standpoint and from how things work out. It's like, okay, don't set yourself up for something that's going to hurt your feelings, but I mean, also you got to believe in what you're doing at the end of the day, and really just like lean into it.
Yeah, I think there's something. It was more something to be said for like the sort of ego death of like
Sure.
not being able to do all of these, all of these things that you had planned. But luck meeting opportunity, meeting hard work has sort of paid off in my favor, I think.
I don't think you have to think about it. I think it's kind of factual. Like I pulled up one of the things I was doing as I was playing on my little pocket computer over here. I was pulling up Mad Cave's website just because I was just wanting to see some of the other stuff. And I've got a lot of these books, but you're their flagship book. Like if you look on their comics tab, you're the first book on there. That's huge, right? That's not only huge, that's really cool. Like, so number one, congratulations. And if I'm not mistaken, this is also the longest running series that Mad Cave has done. Isn't it? Like I was looking at some of these other books. Don't Spit in the Wind is a 3 or 4 issue book.
I think Battle Cats. I think we're like neck and neck with Battle Cats.
Okay.
I think by page count, technically we're like slightly over, but who knows? I haven't gone and checked it exactly. But yeah, roughly neck and neck with Battle Cats for the longest running. Well, for the most content, I suppose.
Right.
But
because Monomyth was a 3 issue series, I think.
6 issues. Monomyth was 6. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I really enjoyed doing that book. It was pretty hard. I think I set myself like a lofty metatextual goal. Some people it landed with, some people it didn't. I don't know. But I kind of was just trying to bottle up all of my feelings about She Who Must Not Be Named and kind of put them on the page. Realistically, there was some, like stuff going on behind the scenes that sort of really prevented us from hitting the home runs we would have liked.
Sure.
That being said, I'm still proud of what we did, and we're currently in the running for for a couple of awards. So fingers crossed we get a win or two, because that would be fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just, and like the She Who Must Not Be Named adventures just keep going, don't they? They
just won't stop. They won't stop.
No,
she's a billionaire. She doesn't have to do or say anything else for the rest of her life.
Yeah, but that's the only thing keeping her relevant. She has nothing else. She has no more inspiration. She has no more spark. She will never create another thing that will make anybody fall in love with it ever again. She's done. This is her only relevance. Instead of just sitting back and collecting her check. So, of course she's going to keep doing that. That's the only thing she has to do.
Yeah.
She's got more money than she's got
even the movies failed. Like the new movies, they failed.
Yep.
Wildly, drastically.
Well,
it's kind of proof that the world is not as like rich as people feel that it is. If you're like really struggling to find the story ideas there, then maybe the tapestry is not as rich as you thought.
Well, which is why they're going right back to making a television series or streaming TV series that just goes right back to the beginning of the books. Like, okay, so we're gonna remake everything that's been done in the movies. We're just gonna put it in a TV format, in a serial format, And it'll probably be extremely successful because that's what people want. People still enjoy that. They still enjoy the original books. They
It's
still enjoy
comfort
the movies.
food.
Yeah.
Exactly, and it's at the 20-year mark, so that generation, is coming back, and they're going to start looking at this, in a very, just a very nostalgic way, and so this will feed on that nostalgia for like the next, 10 to 15 years. So,
Well, and interestingly, so I'll say this, and it's going to come off as kind of like in defense of, and I guess in a way it sort of is, but just because those are the editorial choices that were made doesn't mean those were the only editorial choices that could have been made. I actually think so, like there is a lot that they could have done, right? They could have there is a rich tapestry with those with just the world in general, right? Not even necessarily just that world, but just the mythos, right? With magic, with witches and warlocks and history and cool creatures and D&D handbooks and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot you can do with it, because especially right now in a world where D&D and all of those creatures are kind of having a resurgence in popularity. Everybody's playing it. So there's a lot there. They just didn't do anything with it that was worth doing anything with. Like, it was kind of just committee based. Let's make a movie because we're going to throw a name attached to it, and hopefully
let's throw a couple $100 million at it, see what happens.
Couple billion. Yeah,
No
well,
one ever-
that's Warner Brothers. That's Warner Brothers in a T anyway when it comes to media.
I tell you what, I'll make you a whole lot more money if you give me that couple $100 million.
I was like, look,
I'll make a whole lot of comics too.
I also won't produce what you want, but at least I'll have it.
Oh, well, speaking of sort of like historical moments and just the taking something that's well known, and I kind of want to bring this back to Nottingham because
that's where I was hoping to go with it.
We were very, very lucky to get to read some advanced copies. And I'm absolutely loving the direction of this arc, and I think it's really wonderful. But I promise I'll not spoil anything for those of you who have not yet. But you're taking this concept and well-trod history, and tweaking it. So I think this one, to me, the way that it's kind of feeling now with Nottingham sort of, under siege, this idea that, you've got this town and these people and, disparate groups, the guardsmen, the, loyalists essentially, and you've got the merry men, and you've got Maid Marian, all sort of controlling and very horribly keeping an internal peace here. To me, there's a lot of really great, corollaries. It makes me think a little bit about Ken Follett and the Pillars of the Earth, and was it World Without End, where it was like all about the town, and sort of just the personalities, but the greater history of the outside world sort of forcing its way in, and making it much more important than probably they would have thought themselves to be. I'm really enjoying this, and how much fun really for you is it to get to write something like this where, okay, here's what really happened historically, but let's really twist it and see what we can do, especially given the characters that we've been building for the past 2 arcs plus extra matter.
Extra bits.
Which I was happy to see the editorial. Please see issue, blah, 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 or please see.
Yes.
I was like, ooh.
Yeah, I kind of felt like that was a bit necessary, especially because between volume 2, which was 2022, so almost it's like 2 years ago now. It's wild. And now it's been a bit of time, and I feel like with the sort of the affliction of time, people forget the little details, and I'm like, I want to respect not only what I and my collaborators on the main series have done, but also all of these little details that I can call back to in all of these Tales from Nottingham things that I thought were cool, that my collaborators on those who were writing, I was stepping back. I gave them, like one paragraphers to go off, and then let them do their thing, and just made gave them subtle notes about just to keep things sort of in the direction that I needed them to go, so that I could do this final arc, and respecting that work and bringing that work back, so that people who are reading the main series can then refer back to the Tales series and discover perhaps creators that they hadn't before.
Right.
And like just trying to make this as cohesive world as possible. The idea of a Nottingham universe kind of makes me ill, but just now the word universe attached to any sort of comics property just kind of makes me like eye roll and a little bit. But I
just over my shoulder,
very
just
subtle,
Energon
very
universe
subtle.
being mentioned.
But yeah, it's not. I feel like it's not quite an interconnected universe until we have something that like doesn't specifically say the word Nottingham in the main title. That's kind of
That
where
makes
I'm at.
sense.
It's technically all the one thing until somebody does something a little different, which may or may not be happening, but we'll see.
That's titillating.
Yeah. I think there are a couple more stories to tell in this universe, but I think this is really like the main Nottingham series to me is primarily the sheriff's story. So like, and I'm not really like, this is not an exclusive. It has been mentioned by people at Mad Cave before. So keep your eyes peeled, but this is like the end of the main Nottingham series.
That's good. I mean, to go out, so to speak, on a really epic, very violent arc. This is, I mean, obviously this series doesn't shy away from violence. It's sort of there on, page 1, page 2, way back in issue 1. But how much fun was it writing the directions? Because I know you and and your artists collaborate as well on sort of how it looks. How much fun was it writing the fight scenes, especially the one-on-one fights that the sheriff has?
I will be fairly blunt. I kind of hate writing fight scenes. Like mostly because I try to take the golden principle of, okay, what is the like conflict, what is the unique conflict that we're resolving with each of these action scenes, because otherwise I feel like they become very much the same, and I always worry that like my fight scenes might feel too similar, because oftentimes it's two people with big metal sticks whacking each other. Like,
Well,
how many permutations of this can we see? And that's not to say I'm like happy to see Shane draw literally anything, and it wouldn't be, it would be pleasing and horrifying to the eye at the same time. But yeah, it's hard. Like, I can write people talking. Like, people talking is easy mode compared to like trying to deduce what the like how I'm resolving this conflict in a unique way by having people face off against each other. But I to pick up on what you're saying here, I feel like with the action specifically in this volume, it's like the dirt under the fingernails kind of it really goes deep into that space of things. And that's not to say that things weren't like grimy and gritty and dirty before, but like this is a man who's been pushed to his limit and still keeps getting the hell up. You know, like who else? Batman, maybe. You know what I mean? Like
This is
a man who is a public servant who is absolutely over it. You know?
David,
I'm the law.
in the future, if you do encounter that, you can always go the Mark Waid route. When he was working with Barry Kitson on a Legion series, one time he turned in pages, and it said pages 14 through 17. They fight.
Yeah, we like Shane and I have talked about this, and like he prefers that I give him full script for the fight scenes. Working with Alex, they were like, "You can just tell me, like, I'll choreograph the fight scene if you want." I'm like, I don't feel comfortable. Like, it's not to say that I don't trust them on Death Drop, but like, I was like, I don't want to put any more of this work on you, considering they were, you know, penciling, inking, coloring, everything. I was like, I'm gonna like do my part here.
Yeah.
You know? Whereas Shane, like, he likes the detail, and he'll, you know, shift panels around, do different things, like do his own thing once he has the full script. But I think he likes having that structure there to work from. Not to dive too deeply into the I guess Twitter is full of comics discourse this week, but you know, specifically about scripting, there was a one particularly delightful example, which I don't know if either any of you guys saw, but yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's all about the collaboration with the artist. So I ask them what they want to draw every time, and I try to cater to that as much as possible.
But I think that's a very accurate word parlance that you hit on is choreography. That's what you're basically tasked to do as a writer with that.
Yeah, and that's part of what does my head in with these action scenes is like just visualizing where people are at. Like I literally bought myself a stupid foam sword so that I could like help myself visualize what the hell was going on in these fight scenes. And you know, like there were bits and pieces that I borrowed from things that I've watched, because I watch probably more TV than any mortal man should. And there'll be a little bit that I'm like, oh, that's cool. What if we like infuse that into this? And like, there's a particular scene, I think the one that you're referring to, Steve, in issue 12.
12,
Yeah. And I was like, oh, there were bits and pieces from like a scene in Vikings Valhalla that I was like, oh, this is insanely choreographed. Like, you know, and you just borrow bits and pieces to try and like formulate something that feels new and cool. And clearly, it struck a chord with you. And yeah, that's probably that, and the final fight scene of the series are probably tied for my favorite fight scenes across the whole run. Like,
that's awesome.
So I'm curious about that. Are you, now that you're kind of in the in the comics world, and you know a lot of other creators and anything, do you ever look at other writers' scripts, not to for the content, but just to see kind of what they're doing, like how they're writing these? So, famously, not well, I say famously, I've told the story before. It's famous for me and like two people. But one of my one of my really good friends, Justin Jordan, he writes stuff, and like so he and I were joking one day, and we were talking about writing scripts, and he was like, "Oh no, I just write scene one, they punch, panel two, more punching, half page spread, gratuitous violence." Like, but that's how he looks at it. Again, you look at other people who are scripting, and it is a lot more choreographed. It's basically like reading a film script where they're looking at notes for dancers, or they're looking at notes for martial artists and how they do things. So have you been able to look at other scripts to kind of see how that's being done, or are you just like, no, I've got a system that works for me?
yeah, I kind of look. It's kind of a bit of a mix and match. Like I don't think that much anymore that I read other people's scripts. Um, I just think that like, and this is sort of playing back into that discourse, but they're really kind of an intimate document between you and the artist.
Yeah, you're writing to the
And the
artist.
colorist and letterer, but like it's not quite, to me, it's not quite comparable to a film script where like everybody has like some way and their hands in it. It's more, it's
Yeah.
just very unique to the person who's writing the script, and the person who's then interpreting the script, or the people who are interpreting the script. So I don't so much do that now. I just tend to try to give as much detail as I think that the artist wants, and maybe as much detail. Trying to find the balance between the amount of detail they want and the amount of detail they actually need. And that just comes from experience with the artist. And
Yeah.
sometimes it takes, like 3 issues to find that balance with an artist. But yeah, it's more about collaboration than it is about trying to create some sort of idealized version of what a comic book script should be. I think I'm probably at a level of a bit more detail than like they punch. It just kind of depends on the like what the fight scene is trying to achieve to.
Now, you said that you don't do that now, so I like the inverse of that to me kind of says that you maybe used to look at other people's scripts, and I know what you do for a day job. So is that kind of how you learned to write scripting? Because like we talked about earlier, you came into comics later on in life, much less the actual writing process of comics. And I know the type of writing that I do on my daily life is nothing like the type of writing that you do in comics.
I it definitely did. I think it's impossible to just know how to write a comic script. And not to invoke the name of another horrible person, but I think that my learning on that front started with a bunch of the back matter in Green Lantern Rebirth.
Sure.
So I was getting to and read like a whole bunch of Jeff Johns sort of collaboration with He Who Must Not Be Named. And I like that was kind of enthralling to me. I think I even just inherited like the first trade of both the Flash and Green Lantern Rebirth. And going through the back matter in those, that was how I learned to script. And then like I've read a bunch of like, oh god, I definitely read a bunch of Tom King's scripts, and that's kind of interestingly sort of where I land in terms of the amount of detail I try to put in there and trying to think about the page visually without stepping on the artist's toes. I'm like, here's what I think the page should look like. Go nuts. And every now and again I'll be like, I think this should be a grid, and Shane will be like, no.
Well,
he's like, I don't want the panels to all look the same. So like there is a 9-panel grid in issue 11 that is so unmistakably Shane, in that like even the panels have like sort of like jagged, uneven, like it's like if you ask someone to draw a 9-panel grid while blindfolded, in a sense. Well, and it's so great because you get that feeling like the sheriff is feeling, where he's just like he just keeps having this succession of the worst day ever.
Yeah.
J.H.
And
Williams.
whose fault is that? Whose fault is that?
I was going to say J.H. Williams. He actually draws a lot of 9-panel but there's no straight lines in a J.H. Williams drawn book, and so people don't realize it's a 9-panel grid that he's doing. It's because it's all twirly and it looks like a cyclone.
Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, like that was the really the first my big introduction to reading comics as an adult was Batwoman Elegy, and
Yeah.
that book is insanely laid out. You're like, how like wildly ambitious is this? And yet it just works so seamlessly and effortlessly, and it's enthralling, that book. And like I go back to it so often because it's just like I just think it's almost a perfect comic book, right? If they let them do more with that, it would have been a perfect comic book, you know?
Have you read his Sandman?
Not yet. It's like definitely on my list.
So what he did
I think it
the
was
Overture.
Overture. I couldn't think. I was
Overture,
like,
that's
it's not
what it was,
Preludes. Yeah. He did that. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I again, I'm really excited for the for the wrap up for for this final main arc of Nottingham. And you mentioned that you had a couple projects that are out there, some of which we cannot talk about yet, that are still under wraps. Do you have an upcoming project that you can talk about or you would like to talk about? I know there's obviously the recent Kickstarter, but do you have something else that's planned pretty soon?
I don't think I'm supposed to say
That you
anything
can talk
yet,
about.
but there is a surprise, a new crime book coming out from Mad Cave this August. It's crime and historical fiction, wildly spinning myself out of my comfort zone. And I got a horror short from a publisher who I haven't worked with yet, who that I'm really excited about, that I just turned in the script yesterday. But yeah, like only talking about these things in vague terms, I don't know how helpful that is to your listenership, but
Well, actually, you made me think of a question then. So you mentioned, a horror short, and Monomyth. I think you played with horror elements quite a bit in that book. There was a lot in there that really sort of, had a very visceral feel to it. There was a lot of, unintended consequences and just tragic endings left, right, and center. Every other page there was, or every other book, like half of the team or half of the group died, and then there was more. How are you enjoying writing horror, coming from historical crime? That I guess is a different kind of horror on its
Yeah.
own, but like
I think
horror.
Nottingham kind of has its, especially the first volume,
Mm.
has its little horror elements to it, or like more like slashery elements to it.
Yes.
But yeah, I was never a horror fan growing up either. Like,
Mm.
I was a little scaredy cat, and then just a friend of mine was like, I'm gonna need you to like, grow up a little bit and start mainlining horror films. And it's just such a fun and flexible genre, where you get to make people sad and like thrilled at the same time. It's just a fun way to play with people's emotions, and that's the job, and it makes it fun and easy in a way to play with people's emotions, when anybody can die at any moment and terrifying things can happen. um, it's magical. I love it. And I want to do more. So, and I mean, there's like also Requiem. There's it's deep sci-fi horror. There's elements of that there. We kind of build. And for those listening, this is sort of my Kickstarter collaboration with writer Christoph Borges and artist Phil Apley, and we bill it as Event Horizon meets Memento or The Thing or Aliens, kind of like we're borrowing a lot of like sci-fi horror bits and trying to form it into something new that we're supposedly trying to talk about history repeating itself. And the premise for Requiem is that you've got sort of 5 ships set out on different trajectories trying to find a new home for Earth. Something terrible happened, so new home for humanity. Something terrible happened on Earth, and nobody can on these ships can remember it, or it might happen again. And they sort of deduce that there's something terrifying hiding in their memories, and so they're constantly having to wipe their memories. What does that do to people? Terrible things, as it turns out.
Do you find it? I'm always curious about this when talking to folks who are writing horror. Do you find it difficult to write horror in a comic sense? So when I think of horror, I think of, obviously horror films, and there's so much about horror films that the jump scare, right? Things actually moving at you. Sound plays a huge role in horror film. But you think of where horror started, like the genre started in novels, it started in novellas, it started in written word, and it can go anywhere from Frankenstein, which isn't really a horror book, but I think that planted the seeds. You had Lovecraft, you had Poe, and those are truly horror. Those books will scare you. Those stories, you read them today and they are unsettling.
Yeah.
What are some of the tricks as a writer that you use to really create the atmosphere of horror? I mean, so I think of some comic artists when they do a horror book, it's just gore, right? And to me, gore and horror are separate things. So
Yeah.
do you find it difficult, or I guess not really? Do you find it difficult? How do you channel that?
I think the name of the game is always tension and suspense.
Mm-hmm.
I think using your page turns as effectively as you possibly can. It's not going to ever imitate a jump scare to me. It just can't. But it allows you to play with tension and release, right? And how and where you release the tension. And it's kind of a hard thing to describe because you always have to approach it differently for each horror thing that you're doing, because the setups and payoffs are so wildly different depending on the concept that obviously you have to play with tension in different ways. And it would be lovely for me to talk about that thing that I just turned in, because that's a good example.
Right.
But to wind it back a bit, my love of horror, I think, really has its roots in Gothic horror.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not about jump scares. It's just about unsettling people to the maximal extent, right? And that's kind of where my love of it comes from. Like, gore is fun. I think I try more for body horror than gore as well, but gore is a good tool to kind of release that tension in a way that still unsettles people, right? And there's a lot of kind of gore and body horror in Monomyth and Requiem as well. But yeah, ultimately it's about finding the rhythm of the tension of it all. And I was banding about the kind of outline for that thing that I just turned in with a fellow creator, and they were like, "Oh, this is a great way of just injecting a sense of dread into a comic book, because you kind of don't necessarily always get that just sort of mounting sense of dread, where with this thing, you can sort of inject it panel by panel, beat by beat, as you're going. So we can put a pin in that, and we can definitely
Right.
come back
Okay.
to that one.
Sure.
But yeah, this is a thing that's sort of a half-assed adaptation of an Edgar Allan Poe, plus sort of injecting a modern twist to it, and I'm excited for people to react to this. It's just a 10-pager, but I'm very excited.
Very cool.
That's cool. That's exciting. Well, we've actually been chatting for about an hour on this. Do we have anything else that we wanted to ask?
I have a
Bill, I'm
question
looking
because
at
I
you.
haven't participated much here. Voice. So, David, you're ending your run on Nottingham. You have the last issues coming in. What have you learned the most from issue 1 to the last issue? Like, is there a particular strength that you think you fortified, or was there a particular surprise in the process? What would you say is like your biggest takeaway from seeing something from beginning to end in a particular project like this?
Okay, I'll this is like such a layered question, Bill. I'll start with, I think like it does to me underscore the value of like letting people do things that are longer than 4 or 5 issues.
Mm-hmm.
Like and like there's so much value in that in that giving people the real estate, creating and maintaining an audience. Like I think it's gotten to the point where 4 is starting to become 3, and that's terrifying me.
Yeah. Yep.
I certainly hope we get a pushback in the other direction, because I think we need it. I think people need things to, like the water cooler comics moments as well, right? Where if you're just reading these sort of brief runs, there's the buzz, it starts and it stops, and where does that leave us? So I think there's like a lot of value in being able to do that. Beyond that, I think it's just the little like finer points of making comics that I've learned. Like it's been this weird thing where like I feel like I was a fairly confident storyteller going into this, but like, man, was this a like a masterclass in learning while doing. It's wild, and I'm just grateful. That's the real. Like, I'm just grateful that I get to do this. The best job in the world, and I get to keep doing it.
It's awesome.
Well, I hope you're right about the pushback and longer arcs and longer stories, because we hear that from publishers. Oh, there's just not the appetite past this or the number one sell, and I'm like, Giant Days, right? That is a long story and it's modern. Uh, you've got a million webtoons has proven that people will come back and read and read and read and read and read. So I certainly hope that there is. I do have a question, and you might not be able to answer this, if not, that's fine. But 15 issues would make a hefty tome. Do you think that we're going to get a hardcover out of this?
So volumes 1 and 2 already have their own hardcovers. I suspect we'll see a volume 3 hardcover next year. I'm hoping we get a slipcase with that, but I can't answer it. And I'm also hoping that we get the like big hefty tome.
That's I want an omnibus of this for Ye Old Bookshelf over here. But
Collected Nottingham.
I have heard things, and that's all I will say. But we're not first cab off the rank in terms of getting the big hefty tome. That's probably going to start with Battle Cats.
okay.
the nature of the beast, no pun intended. The CEO of the company's book
Yeah,
came
sure.
first. You gotta pay. You gotta pay your you gotta pay your tithe to the man in charge.
There's reasons that Spawn and Savage Dragon still get published. You know what I mean?
And we'll never ever stop being
Right.
Yeah,
it's true. It's true. And speaking of Spawn, Shane, our Nottingham artist, also a Spawnuary winner. So that man will be on the cover of a Spawn comic soon, which I feel like is the coolest thing he could have possibly wanted. The only cool thing to him, I feel, would be the interiors of a Spawn comic.
Yeah.
Hey. I mean, I have to say that man can
so
draw
far his jam.
That man can draw a knotted forearm, like nobody's business. I mean, there's so much sinew in those things. I'm like, this is perfect for
to the
Spawn.
point where he was like, in this volume, like the sheriff is just missing one of his sleeves. I don't know if you noticed that. There's like just a missing sleeve. He's like,
and everybody's always just doing like the downward, like the triflexes with whatever they're holding. I love it. I love it. It's great. Congrats to him for that, because that'll be a good exposure for him as well with the Spawn fans of the world.
Truly.
That's cool. Well, yeah, we have been going at this for about an hour. If we wanted to move on to books, we can definitely talk about that. And David, you're always welcome to join us as we talk about comics that we've been reading.
I'll hang out and chat for a little bit. Because I've been on deadline, I don't have something to offer you, but I'll gladly participate as always.
You mean people have day jobs? What is this? What's going on here?
No, trying to get the other thing in,
Oh, and that too. Oh, that's great. Well, Caleb or Bill, did you want to go first? Bill, I know your throat's a little iffy, but did you?
Yeah, but maybe on that basis, maybe I should go first, just in case I go plop there. So, all right. Well, Steve, if you can put up the graphic of the book that I want to talk about. Nobody else will be privy to this until now, but this saga of Bill's box from DCBS and its travels across the country is it's a clammy tale. But I don't have my books yet, but that's okay. So as I mentioned on the last series, and my whole I don't like comics anymore kind of mood I've been in, I've been digging myself out of it a little bit and hitting a lot of the DC first issues right off the bat to see what I might really enjoy. And this book, I wouldn't say it knocked it out of the park, but it was much more interesting than I thought it would be. And this is Suicide Squad Dream Team, solicited for 4 issues. And the writer is Nicole Maines, who played Dreamer on the Supergirl series, trans actress. And the artist is Eddie Barrows. And this is one of the preludes to the Absolute Power event that Mark Waid is kind of shepherding through the summer. And let me tell you this, Nicole Maines is a natural writer. I mean, you read this, you think this is somebody who has had 15, 20 years under their belt. She's written a few stories here and there, mostly in the anthologies. But that's the main thing you come across, you come away with from this. Let me put it that way, is that she's a seasoned storyteller, no matter what the credits say. So where are we with Suicide Squad Dream Team? So this is after Beast World, Titans Beast World, which I have to get caught up on, but there are some threads that come off of that. There's some threads that come off of, and Caleb might be very interested to hear this, of Superman, Jonathan Kent, the Son of Krypton, whatever that series was. To make Steve enticing, this even ties into the Sandman universe in a very cool way. So where are we with Suicide Squad? So Weller's putting another team, in some cases the dream team in this instance, pulling off the Jonathan Kent threads. Gamora has its president, Bendix, recently deceased.
Yep.
And this is a nation that has a lot of super weaponry, a lot of super powered individuals, and Weller wants it. So she puts together this team and she approaches Dreamer. Now, Dreamer, is a precognitive, kind of ideal in terms of a tactical leader in the field, if you can anticipate one or two things happening before they happen. But she knows that she's not going to get Dreamer on the conventional circuit. So what she does is she basically puts and this is a thread that comes from the Supergirl series of the Haven, where, the aliens, Steve may know this more than anybody else, where the aliens would live and be relatively comfortable in this sort of asylum. That's under threat. So she's basically blackmailed into becoming a member of the Suicide Squad. And who else do you have in this version of Suicide Squad? You have Harley Quinn, who yet again has to do community service. You have Bizarro. You have, though not pictured here, Clock King. You have Black Alice. And you have Deadeye, which is a Deadshot knockoff, who also happens to be Waller's nephew, who made some appearances in Lazarus Planet. A minor character, but they're kind of giving him a bit more to do here. So to go to Gamora, they figure that, with the anti-invasion technology that this country has, there's no easy way to get there. But Dreamer finds that she can access the dream world. So hence, a slight tie into the Morpheus land there. The sad thing about it, though, is you basically come out of someone's dream. And unfortunately, when they do that, just some innocent Gamoran who went to sleep woke up. They never woke up. They died because of what their body went through as the other members came through. And when Dreamer is in Gamora, she's seeing things that are happening in the future, and she gets a glimpse of just how powerful and how dangerous Waller is about to become, and that changes her focus. So, Steve, if we can just take some of the pictures here. This is a fairly nice shot of the team that's there. If you can go to the next one, and this might be like Caleb likes, always nice where there's a Bizarro freak out. So
love that.
Okay. And this was, I thought, the best bit of art in the book. And then if we could just go to the next page, one thing that was really impressive was the dialogue and the burgeoning friendship between Harley and Dreamer, and just some really nice dialogue of somebody who feels they're in way over their head and somebody else who's always in over their head, and basically telling how to deal with it. And there's nice touches of comedy. There's nice, very serious touches in there. I've never been a big fan of Eddie Barrows. I'm not a big fan of his. And this is not an inking thing, but he's very heavy on shade. And there's some people who are great at it. I think the best example ever was Gene Colan, who was just a masterful of too much shade, but it was okay because of the way, that he, going back to another word from before, choreographed. So I've never really been drawn to him on that basis. I think for, a story like this, it'll, it fits better than if he was doing, Tiny Titans or something. But, with this, it works for the darker tones of the story. But again, I just go back to just how well written this story is, and kind of sets up the Dreamer could be a player in whatever the landscape is, beyond this summer. Especially if one of the Prelude series has her as the lead focus. Like I said, not a perfect comic like most number ones. It's exposition heavy, but she balances it fairly well because, again, there are readers that have never read a Suicide Squad book before. And again, just the conceit of a trans writer writing a fairly, bro concept like Suicide Squad. It's a very entertaining prospect for me. So not a perfect first issue, but the strangeness of some of the elements really, really made me like it more than I think I otherwise would have if it was just a conventional Suicide Squad tale.
So what's kind of cool about this, if I'm not mistaken, both of these characters are characters that got their origin outside of comics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yep.
I like that. So was it Eddie Burroughs? I was a fan of his from way back in the Avatar Press days when he was kind of doing stuff for them. And then he did the Freedom Fighters book for DC, and I thought he did a really great job on that.
Yeah. Well, he also had a fantastic colorist on that.
That's a valid point.
Fantastic colorist on that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Very cool.
And like I said, that was a twisted enough tale where his style worked a little better than some others.
Sure.
But
Freedom
there are
Fighters,
other pages I could have provided where I think, Caleb, you may have come on the side of agreeing with me on that, on some of my criticisms.
Oh no, I wasn't even saying that. Like, no, I think they're valid criticisms. I mean, he is an ink heavy artist, and my favorite stuff of his is typically horror stuff, so it makes sense, right? And it's a lot of heavy detail and stuff like that regard. So not disagreeing with you at all. I like the stuff of his that I've seen, but again, he doesn't work for a certain type of book either.
Yeah.
He is certainly an artist that is meant to invoke a particular tone, and he does it really well. When he does it well.
Yep. And it'll be interesting to see as the series goes on, because most of the focus in terms of the character study was on Harley and on, because Harley sells, and Dreamer. But you kind of feel from the structure that these other members are going to have their spotlight as the series goes on. So
I also really like the idea that there's a Suicide Squad book that passes the Bechdel test.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun for me. So,
but I'm just so impressed with her as a writer. I mean, if you really come away feeling like this is somebody who's been writing since the 90s. You really get that feel.
Was this her first book, or was there one other? Did she?
Oh no, she's done.
She did a Dreamer book, didn't she?
Yeah, she did a Dreamer. She's done a couple of the Pride anthologies and a couple of the seasonal anthologies for DC.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's all been DC. But I mean, I think that's the main thing you'll come away with, that where it just doesn't feel like somebody where this might be their fourth credit. Yep. So. Here you go. That's my book.
Nice. Do we have an update on the box?
Yeah. Let me get. They did take off that I would be receiving it today.
Is this a new segment? What's up with Bill's box?
What's up with Bill's box?
Yeah, where the travels of Bill's box.
They haven't updated when I'm going to receive it.
I'd hate it when you don't know when you're going to receive your box.
But it did leave Northampton, PA, which is about 2 hours from here at 8:16 p.m.
Oh,
so hopefully I will get it tomorrow.
What do you?
Sisterhood of the Traveling Box.
Say that one more time, David.
The Sisterhood of the Traveling Box.
Yeah. I wonder what the rough estimate of how many hands that have touched Bill's box is.
Oh, at least every stop, at least it gets touched twice.
Yeah.
Gets
a
touched
good.
in more cities than others.
Yeah. It's clearly been handled quite a bit in
All right,
Ohio.
now you got to stop because when you get the baton on this, it goes south. You have to stop.
All right, I'll cut him off, and I'll take the baton and go next if everybody's okay with that.
Sure.
So I've got a book that I'm really excited to talk about, and it's a more recent book. Actually, I think it debuted last week. And I'm not gonna bury the lead. The book is Feral from our friends over at Image Comics, written by the same team that did the kind of the smash hit series Stray Dogs, if you remember that. And so they did their serial killer dog story, and now they're going to scare the shit out of us with a story about kitty cats, which is really cool. Again, Tony Fleece wrote the thing. Trish Forstner drew it with Tone Rodriguez, who also did some artwork on it. Brad Simpson does the color, and I don't know if this is the letterer or what, but Sarah Richard is listed as Cougar Magic. I don't know what Cougar Magic is, but I like it, and I like comic books that are made with cougar magic. There is a part where there's like a magic cougar in here, so I
I
imagine
want
they
a
had some.
Cougar Magic credit.
Yes, like that is a.
I want to
imagine your claim to fame being a
whatever
cougar.
the
Yeah,
hell
like
it is.
Cougar Magic.
it's pretty great, right? So yeah, it kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier, though. How do you do horror in comics, right? You play with people's you manipulate their expectations, you manipulate their emotions, and this team did a really great job with that in Stray Dogs, right? These are beloved creatures. They are drawn in a style that, evokes Bluth. It evokes all dogs go to heaven. That's very much what this line is. And if you know anything about Tony Fleece, the guy he spent most of his comics career to date drawing My Little Pony, right? So for him to like roll out and just go ham on some horror stories with these cute little critters is pretty amazing. So this book kind of is a getting the gang together book, which again is a fun trope, but it's also setting the world and showing you what's going on. You have got effectively three cats, but you only meet two of them at first. And by all intents and purposes, on page one, it's a perfect day until it's not. You see the cat lounging on a window sill, just looking at the sunshine. And then again, to David's point, right? Using a page turn effectively, you turn the page, and all of a sudden you see these kennels with bars over them, and all these cats behind them. Right? They are in cages. They're in an animal control truck. They have been picked up. What happened between them? We don't know yet. We'll find out as the series go along. But you have these two cats, right? You've got Elise, who is kind of this matriarchal cat figure, and then you have Patch, who is kind of a look. I just want to get to where we're going. I don't trust anybody. Not sure what's happening here, but we were put here, or folks did something to put us here. Like I'm done. And they are in these cages and trying to figure out what's happened. And Elise is having a meltdown, which you wouldn't not expect, right? But she's not having a meltdown because they've been picked up by animal control. She's having a meltdown because she can't find the third cat. The third cat, whose name is Lord Fluffy Pants, is not answering her. They don't know where they're at, and they're separated. And so everything has gone to shit for these poor creatures, right? And as they're driving down the road, bumping and bouncing and stuff, they hear the radios in the front as the two animal control folks are talking, and they're being dispatched to somewhere else. And then as they round a curve, you see a fox in the middle of the road, just kind of doing foxy shit. And it causes a wreck, right? Again, you get that moment. We've all seen 101 Dalmatians, right? Car launches off the cliff. Catastrophe happens, except this is a Tony Fleece and Trish Forstner book, so you see bodies because they're not afraid to just drop them. And this truck, this animal control vehicle, ends up upside down, and the cage is open, and everybody gets released. All the cats are running around trying to figure out what's going on. Where are things going? Well, Elise does find Patch, and so she links up with him, and they still can't find Lord Fluffy Pants, but they're lost in the woods, and they're trying to figure out either what do they need to do. Do they go back to the truck and wait? Do they go off in the wilderness? Do they try to get home? Where's Lord Fluffy Pants? And as they're figuring these things out, they start to see some other creatures, right? There's some rustling in the bushes and stuff. And one of the creatures they come up on is a raccoon. and this raccoon is frothing at the mouth, like something is not right, and it just goes after them, and they try to run, but they can't get away. And then a pack of foxes, like probably the same one that was in the street, show up out of nowhere and just rend this poor raccoon to shreds, right? Like just massive violence. And so these cats are stuck in a hole in the tree while they're just watching insane things happen. If you've seen Old Yeller, you understand that rabies is a thing that can happen to animals, right? And that's effectively, they don't hide the fact that there is rabies happening here, and you actually see the radio from from our animal control folks going off and just saying, "Hey, this strain is moving faster than we thought. It's making these animals like," and so they set the scene. Without spoiling anything, towards the end of the book, Lord Fluffy Pants does make an appearance. We understand what's going on. There is another kind of conflict that takes place with some other animals, and eventually they decide they can't sit still. They've got to go. What's going to happen in issue 2? Man, your guess is as good as mine. The stage has been set really well. I am deeply invested in this book. I'm deeply invested in these little. I'm not a cat person, but I'm bought in. Like I am. I need these things to make it to the other side, and we don't know if they're going to. I have listened to the writer of this book, Tony Fleece, on other podcasts saying it's going to defy your expectations. He's already been to cons and stuff as this came out. People are like, "Hey, if and we've read Stray Dogs, right? So we know what can happen. He's not afraid to break your heart." But he said he is not going to break your heart in the way that you might expect in this book, right? It's going to different places. It is a horror story. It's meant to be a horror story. But whereas Stray Dogs was more Silence of the Lambs, this is going to take another turn, right? This is going in a different type of horror direction. And I love it. It is the perfect mix of animation style drawing, just that pure true, again, Don Bluth, man, like that all dogs go to heaven style art getting dropped with some seriously terrifying moments that that have you just locked in a way that I don't think would work if these were just people, right? You wouldn't be nearly invested. It's not as wholesome. We're desensitized to the death of people in our media, for by and large. I don't think we're there with animals, which is a good thing, and I don't ever want to be. I don't need to see that, right? Like I have 3 dogs. I have, actually, it's funny. I have a picture of my dog drawn by Trish Forstner up on my wall over here. So like, I'm a dog person. I don't need to see gratuitous violence against them, but when it's used well, it's gonna be a big thing. It's going to be a cool book, and I have every expectation that this will have the same amount of critical acclaim, and hopefully the same amount of monetary acclaim for that creative team as Stray Dogs did. I am in on this book. It is the good shit.
Yeah.
Well, and I think one of the sorry.
Go ahead, Steve.
I was just gonna say, like, one of the things that made Stray Dogs so successful, and people complain about the sort of the cynical use of variants and variant covers as a way to just sort of like sell more books. I have to say, Trish and Tony have they hit the magic with the idea that they had with Stray Dogs, and obviously that's the same kind of thing that they brought it to Feral, because they've already started coming out with some of these interesting horror homage covers in the style of a Sultan Bluth movie.
Yeah.
Using the characters just in putting them in these 4 sort of pastiches that are well known. And I actually think that's really intelligent. It's really smart. And the fact that it's a great book, that Stray Dogs was such a great book, and Feral seems to be promising to be the same.
It's
go for it. Collect them all.
It's the juxtaposition of 2 things that don't normally mesh well, right? But and if you think about horror in general, horror is full of that. Horror movies are filled with priests and nuns, these holy religious figures that are then doing totally unholy things, right? That's the virgin in the horror story who is not so virginal by the end of the thing. Like the horror is filled with that. And to take, like I said, just the visual stance that they do with these books is really cool. And I'm kind of like you. I don't buy variant covers. If I see a cool one that's the same price, I'll grab it. I'm not spending $30 on a 28-page or 32-page book. I'm just not. But for those of you who collect them and you're into that thing, God bless. Do whatever you want to. A lot of comic shops make their mint that way. That's the way that they have still survived. So do what you do. More power to you. I'm also not going to buy a bunch of statues and stuff of these cats either, but that's a thing that people do, and if you're into that part of the culture, God bless you. Just keep doing it so these folks can keep getting work. David, put out a line of Nottingham pops and we'll make it happen.
As someone who owns, for the whole second arc, as someone who owns the variant black and white covers for all of them, yes, I have taken those.
Thanks to John Runyon, I have a ridiculous number of Stray Dog variants.
Yeah,
it officially launched into ridiculous. I'm actually going to wait for the trade on this one.
Okay.
Because I did miss it last week. But I also enjoyed the reread of Stray Dogs so much in trade that, and especially since Image's price points are friendly, I think I'm going to wait on the trade for this, but I think this is a very novel way of having a sequel that isn't a sequel.
Right.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. Caleb, I'm just going to ask you on the variant issue. Did you variant dip on gargoyles?
To a degree, not by any means to the degree that I could have. Dynamite is one of those companies that puts out a lot of variant covers for a lot of stuff. There were some that I did. The first issue, I bought a couple of the variants, but I did not pass the first.
You didn't
issue.
keep it, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't buy multiple.
That's the dilemma
issues.
I'm having right now with Space Ghost.
Yeah,
the variants are gorgeous. Oh man.
There were some of the variants that I did buy, but I bought those in lieu of the main book. I don't think I double dipped on any of the other books. And again, these weren't. I wasn't buying the $50 variant.
If you just bought a variant instead of the main cover.
Yeah. If they had, Lexington's my favorite gargoyle, so if they had a Lexington gargoyle on the cover, I probably picked it up just because that's my boy.
On the note of variants, some that I will be picking up though are the DC variants coming up with the style guide from the 80s from Jose Luis Garcia.
Yeah.
Those I will.
I will probably grab those too, but again, that's more for just Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, just because God, like he is. I could look at it. He is so formative for everything,
and yet was never on a long run.
Yeah,
which is kind of amazing. I think the comic he drew the most was DC Comics Presents.
Probably
the Superman team up title
or whatever. What's the DC version of the Ohatmu?
Who's Who was that was a hodgepodge of stuff, and
sure.
he actually doesn't have that many credits in it.
Oh, really? Okay, maybe
most of the covers were Perez, the wraparounds, and in some cases those are some people that never. There's a art by Marv Wolfman and by Len Wein in those. I think that may be the only time you got to see that. So yeah. That's kind of cool, but he does have entries in there. Yeah. Okay, Steve, you're about to break my heart, I think, a little bit with a long-running. Can't even call it a series of series, and
a concept, a universe.
Spoil something for me because I am not caught up, but I can deal with it. So, tell us about what you're going to tell us about.
Well. Way back, which at this point is kind of surprising to me. It has been 8 years that since Jeff Lemire and Dean Ormston put out the original Black Hammer. Lemire is finally ending it, and the sort of the wrap up final series that's been going on over the past year. Essentially, it's 6 issues. 6th issue just came out the other week, is Black Hammer: The End. And it did not pull any punches. This was truly the end, but in a wonderful way. And in ending it, he pretty much, created something new. And this, of course, is Black Hammer's version of Crisis on Infinite Earths. And so up to this point, through issues 1 through 5, it's really focused a lot on Lucy, who is the daughter of the original Black Hammer, who actually was instrumental in freeing the original team from their, I don't know if you call it a prison or just sort of a pocket universe where they were being held safely. Way back, and I believe it was like the first or second volume of Black Hammer when they were able to escape from that. But of course, that set up what happens in this series. The whole reason why they were being kept in this sort of special pocket universe is because as long as the universe that they were from forgot or didn't have them in it, all universes would be kept safe from the anti-god, who's the anti-monitor of the Black Hammer universe. But as soon as they were released, it also brought the anti-god back. And through all of the series that have followed, all the spin-off series, the Unteens, the Quantum Age, Skull Digger, Dr. Star, which became Dr. Andromeda, Visions even, and just all of the tie-ins and everything.
Cthulhu is still by all means.
Cthulhu is still one of my favorite, just because it's Cthulhu.
And
Cthulhuese.
Yeah.
But all of it's been kind of working to this moment because Anti-God in the background has been eating universes, just destroying one after another. The incursions, if you would, of the Marvel Universe, or just the sheer destruction from Crisis on Infinite Earths back in DC's version of this. So it's very similar. And he's created his own Hall of Heroes. There's all the different variants of all the different characters that that have been created from the series of books. All are getting together and throwing everything they have at Anti-God in Spiral City. Meanwhile, it turns out that essentially the Herald, in this case, who's been sort of helping the Anti-God destroy things, has been an alternate version of Black Hammer, who's been killing all of his other variants and stealing their hammers and just sort of, leading to the demise of each planet. Because really, it's only the power of that hammer that can destroy the physical body of the anti-god. And as long as all the Black Hammers are out of the picture, and the only one that's still around is helping him, it's going to continue. But Lucy, of course, is the new Black Hammer in her universe. And her family, which has been very central to this story, has been sort of knocked into a different universe. They end up in the same universe where the original Black Hammer team has sort of taken up residence because they have lives there. Barbarian and Captain was it Slam?
Abraham Slam.
Abraham Slam. They all have lives now, and they're trying to
Golden Gale.
To be there. Yeah. Lucy's family has been kept safe there, but at this point, no one's safe. And finally, the incursion has happened on the real world, this world, in the Black Hammer universe. And one of the central figures, we haven't really mentioned, Colonel Weird, who is a multiversal figure, has a real world equivalent, Colonel Weird, who writes comic books, and he writes Black Hammer comic books. And of course, he's the last one, left who has not sort of joined together in this place outside of time and no space. It's really there where the final confrontation of Black Hammer versus Black Hammer happens, while Spiral City in one universe is basically trying to stop Anti-God physically. And there's some beautiful, beautiful artwork in this. This is the wraparound cover of the final issue that highlights some of these characters. And obviously, if you're a fan of Marvel or DC, you can pick out who these corollary characters represent. Their equivalents in the DC universe or in the Marvel universe. And Black Hammer has never been shy about this. The whole story, the whole universe of stories, are an homage to these characters, but told in very different ways. There's just some excellent, just excellent artwork here. You really get the power of these characters. There's a lot of narration from Lucy. There's a lot of narration where she's basically, she was the person to kind of expose and talk about Black Hammer, in the original books, and here she is. It's her story, really finishing it in her final battle with her, Urzat's father. But one of the things that, there's a concept in here, ultra weird. The ultra weird is sort of like the merging of all the Colonel Weirds in the universe. And
Colonel's weird.
The Colonel's weird become ultra weird. There's just all these great little moments. But one of the things, and I wish I was able to get a graphic for this. So this is going to make for terrible radio, but I definitely did want to point it out because it's absolutely gorgeous. In the final sort of splash page that shows all of the heroes, all the multiversal heroes, throwing everything they have at the anti-god. Just this gorgeous spread of all of these characters. It's wonderful, and it's fun. It's a great book, and I'm not going to tell you how it ends. Obviously, Ultra Weird's involved, and Lucy as as the true inheritor of the Black Hammer, come together to save what's left of the multiverse after Anti-Gods had his fill of destroying things. It's really gorgeous, and of course, again, if your DC history with Crisis on Infinite Earths, you can kind of see where this might be going. And I'm hoping that this is not truly the end, because there could be more stories to tell. But even if it is, even if Lemire's done with this, and it's like, you know what, I told my story, took 8 years to get it done, but I got it done. And I don't know how many pages worth. Caleb, you've got all the collected editions. I mean, it's a sizable story. It's really interesting reading about how he first really thought of this concept way back in 2007 and put it on the back burner. And it wasn't until 2016 that he was able to really, get the collaborators together to put this out. And in that 8-year time, it's definitely given birth to a lot of, some of my favorite comics and stories of the past decade.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of so many great series, whether it was Barbalian or Skulldugger and Skeleton Boy. I mean, there were just so many great series. The Vision series, you were talking before about. Well, you all were talking before about horror comics. That amazing Madame Dragonfly story,
Talkie-walkie
Johns, and like you said, Cthulhu,
Cthulhuese.
Just some great stuff, and I have to get caught up.
And this series took a little bit. It felt like it took a little bit longer. I think there were some delays.
I think the first issue came out last August.
Yeah, maybe even a little bit earlier. It was definitely it started in the summer. And it literally just finished the other week. So it took its time to get these 6 issues out.
Publication date is August of 2023.
Yeah. So I'm happy that he was able to finish it. And with the a great set of collaborators, artists, co-writers, other writers who took, especially the Visions series, which had a lot of guest writers. They really did a wonderful job in creating this universe and killing this universe, but potentially just sort of starting something new. So we'll see. And again, if anybody hasn't read Black Hammer, please do not start with the end. Don't start with the end. Start at the beginning with adjective lists, subtitle lists, Black Hammer, and go from there.
Though it was due to a cease and desist order, do they meta explain Dr. Star versus Dr.
No. They keep with Andromeda in this.
But it was just one if they explained it.
No,
Okay.
they didn't, and which is unfortunate.
He hinted he was going to do something like that. But,
yeah.
Okay.
I remember that. I remember when that first happened. It's like, wait a minute, why is it Andromeda and not Star? And we thought it was this big sort of like meta reason that was going to happen, or multiversal reason. And no, it was a legal challenge. So
they may. I need to go back, and at some point I will go back and reread everything. They may have there may have been a 1 or 2 liner in there. I can't remember if they did.
But it was more of a hint than a validation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I cried when I finished the book. Like that's not like, oh no, I cried. It was like I legit had tears. Like I cried when I finished this book. This is not see. So 2 things I would disagree with you on, Steve. To just, this was not an homage. This was a love letter. This was a love letter to the medium. Of all the stories, of all the pulps, of all the superhero stuff. It was not derivative. It was just a pure love letter saying this is what I'm giving back to what you all gave me. And it's one of the best examples of that ever. And the second thing I would disagree with you on is that I hope it is actually the end. I think this was the perfect stopping point. I think that this was the absolute gem of a wrap up. I think that this plane was landed so smoothly, it's ridiculous. I think Malachi Ward was a great artist to put on this book. If I had my druthers, I would have done the Ouroboros thing, and I would have had Dean Ormstrom draw it. Because he was the one who started it up. But like, if again, it's not mine to do. This is one of the best things I've ever read. This is one of the reasons that I can't be objective about Jeff Lemire, and I've said that, and it's very true. I can't be. I'm going to read everything he writes. Everything he writes is going to be the best thing that came out that year. He's a fantastic and very adept storyteller, and is probably the best at the craft. To my mind, he is the. And David, I heart you. Don't throw things at me.
Listen, I got a long way to climb. I get it.
To
giving me
mind,
a new career aspiration. Become Taylor's favorite writer.
Be my favorite. Absolutely. But Jeff Lemire is the most talented, the most rooted in his craft comics writer and artist that is operating in the medium today, in my not so humble opinion. Right, like it is just an opinion. Right, that's not in an encyclopedia anywhere. So I'm curious though, just while we're on the topic, did you all have a favorite? So did you have a favorite character from this, and did you have a favorite artist from this? From the entirety of the series.
I mean, I did want to sort of second. I did want to second what you said about Malachi Ward. I thought he was excellent in this series. I thought he did a great job in the end. In the end of the end, the colors I really do want to call out here. So the flats were done by Bryce Davidson, and there's just something about this where the original series kind of started off being very pulpy and sort of like subdued colors, and some of the side, like Barbalian and a couple of the other books were very subdued. Was it? I can't remember. It was the historical one about the pilots.
Yeah.
The
Black Hammer 45.
45.
Yes. Again, very subdued color palette, sort of like very beiges and basics, and
which was about mix.
And this was bright. This was hitting you with all of the candy colors of the era that it's referencing. My favorite. I don't know if this is great for everybody, but the Cosmogog, I think, was that made me cry a lot. Colonel Weird's journey was just, to me, that was wonderful.
I think being a huge Starman fan, I think I always lean towards Dr. Andromeda. But it's also, this is very much like Astro City. You say one character and then
You think of 50
There's a
more.
connection and
some other things. So that the saying very favorite character is tough. Favorite artist, Max Fiamora. And
Yeah.
yeah. Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Marvelous.
I would
Really?
say for mine, Barbalian is my favorite character.
My favorite series. I forgot.
And Tyler Crook was my favorite artist, and he did the Cosmic. He did that. I've got it on my wall. You know, I spent money on that. So
he did the variant cover for number 6 as well. So if you if you are like or enjoy variants, Tyler Crook did the B cover.
Yeah. For my favorite series was the biggest surprise, which was Skulldigger and Skeleton Boy. Because if you tell me your favorite series is going to be the Punisher and the Damian Wayne analogs, I was like, no, it's not. But it was such a surprise how well crafted that series was and the places it went that I would say that was probably my favorite series.
Here's also why that was cool, right? It's not just about Batman, right? It's this. It's Nightmare and Sleepy. Yeah. That's where that comes from, right? That's literally where this was from. Clue Comics 1 through 14. I'm trying. I don't remember when this was put out, but it was in the 30s. That's who those characters are. Like this is premised off something that predates Batman, right? Like Nightmare and Sleepy is where he got that, and it's absolutely that whole premise. Like I bought this because of that book. It is
Nightmare and Sleepy.
It's
okay. And then just on the Crisis on Infinite Earths issue, this is going back a few years where Eric Larson had something called the Next Issue Project, where he was going to do what would have been the next issue of Classic Golden Age series. If you can find Fantastic Comics number 25, he basically gives you a Crisis on Infinite Earths in 8 pages. And it's really cool. So just want to throw that out for anybody who needs that scratch sort of itched in a novel way. So
I'm looking it up.
Is that a Gone Wandaland printing?
It absolutely is. Yes, sir.
Which is all public domain stuff. Yeah. I've seen those. I just haven't gotten any.
It's really cool. It really is.
I definitely have to check that out.
Yeah. Okay. David, have you read any of the Black Hammer books?
I read the first volume and I've read Barbalian. That's it. It's like definitely like soon I need to go and read the rest of the stuff. No, I loved it and like I'm keen to get into the rest of it. Just like so much to read. I feel like I'm in this perennial catch-up game. I know it's with a lot of people, but like, you know, I've got everything before 2018 to still kind of catch up on.
Just a few comics here and there, just about 80 plus years.
And there's an Ohatmu as well.
Yeah,
you know,
Ohatmu. You guys are the only people I know who've actually pronounced it out loud.
Everybody says Ohatmu. Jesus,
I've seen it. I've never heard somebody say
he doesn't hang out with our kind of people.
No.
Yeah. I'm not hanging out on those 11 o'clock comic boards.
He's scared.
So
everybody with their omniboos and their Ohatmus and anything that ends in ooze.
David, one thing I might recommend for the Black Hammer series, Dark Horse did these really great big hardcover. I think for actually
very nice.
For Black Hammer, I think there's 2 volumes, and then for World of Black Hammer, I think there's going to be 5. Very thick hardcover. They're made to look great on a shelf. They did the right thing and kept the spines all uniform so that it all lines. They did a really good job with it. So if you are wanting to find everything in kind of one spot, that's what I would direct you to. You can get them at most comic shops, but also Amazon has them at a fairly decent price, and so does cheapgraphicnovels.com if you want to grab them there without breaking your bank account. So it's a good place to find it all kind of collected in one spot without going through the hunt.
Absolutely. It would be nice if we had a lovely little digital comics platform that actually was
Wouldn't it,
be
though?
serviceable.
That wasn't a piece of shit.
We used to. We can't have nice things.
Yeah.
But
broke,
you know,
they broke what it wasn't broke. All right. Well, we were almost at the 2-hour mark, so we better start wrapping this show up. When we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up, we do so with 2 segments. The first is where we show off, kind of a show and tell, any sort of things that tie into geek culture that we've gotten over the past few, usually 2 weeks, but schedule's been a little weird. So, Geek Gets. Steve, you always claim you never got one, so it looks like
Here we go.
Not a Marvel and not a DC. Look at that.
No, it's Void Rivals on one side, and on the other side, it's Transformers. So it's actually a reversible poster. It's very nice. I've been loving the shared universe, David, of the shared universe books that I honestly have never really enjoyed reading when they were published in other, from other publishers. For some reason, I did like some of the original Marvel stuff, but getting some of the stuff from the recent IDW, I just didn't get into it.
Who I forgot who's the team on Scarlet? That looked good.
Good question. I forgot. That's not out yet.
That's
coming out. But that
yeah, it's coming soon.
Whoever it is, it was like, oh, that looks interesting.
Yeah. Right now, I'm working my way through Cobra Commander and Duke.
Yep. Caleb?
So my Geek Get, as happens from time to time, is going to be music based. Got a new album. This is the newest album from Sarah Shook and the Disarmers. It's called Revelations. So unless you live under a rock and you've been on Beyonce's internet in the last week and a half, 2 weeks, a lot of country music is like, what is country music, and this, that, and the other is being heavily debated. There is a very large and very great strain of queer country music. You call it country, call it folk, punk, I don't care what you call it, but it's just that, right? It's the Jason Isbell, Tyler Childers, and Sarah Shook is a great example. Sarah Shook is they are a queer country artist, and they write some very cool songs. You can go check them out. I am a big fan, and so this is their newest thing, and it's great, and you should go listen to it and own it and buy their shit so they can keep doing what they're doing. So
cool.
Well, Caleb,
I can second that. It was very good.
Yeah. It's still in my queue. Sorry.
That's fine. Check it out. It may not be your cup of tea.
We generally do check out stuff, that each other recommends. We do. I had hoped to join you in having a vinyl offering. I went to 3 concerts in 5 nights, which at my age ain't easy. But I did see Adamant and the English Beat. I saw Magnetic Fields, and I saw Jesus Jones. Magnetic Fields had vinyl, but if you've ever been to the town hall in New York City, there's one little table and a big fucking line. So there was just no way I could justify the time that would have spent, because I would have liked to have picked up some of the early Magnetic Fields or Future Bible Heroes records on vinyl. And then Jesus Jones had a single, and the single was sold out since I had the last night of the tour. So no go on the vinyl. But I still got stuff, and I wanted to show you the Superpowers Whirly Bat from Todd McFarlane's revival of the Kenner line from the 80s. And Steve seems to really like this one.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Yep. There also is a variant of this that you can get from McFarlane's website, which is the 90s bearded Brainiac from like Panic in the Sky from the 90s. And unlike this version, which is just the ship, that version actually has the Brainiac figure, and it's a painted variant. So you might want to check that out if you do get it. So,
Caleb, you got a shout out here from Nikki VT. Thank you, Nikki. And Victor Rose. Ooh, Jesus Jones.
Yes.
Right?
Is that our new friend from Finland, or
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Some brain cells will work. Yep.
I do have a little one.
You had something.
Cool.
I do have a little one. I am sorry. Let me I am a member of the Drew Green Sticker Club on Patreon, and I've been getting these cool stickers and just sorry, it's kind of like the focus is not right, but and just sticking them on my water bottle, and every time I get a new one, I'm like, ooh, that's cute. I'm obviously continuing to the trend of like shouting out my friends on these little little tiny segments at the end, but
Love it.
if you like little stickers of big boys and have somewhere to put them, they're really cute and geeky and fun. So
Nice.
We love Drew.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap this show up, and our final segment where we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up is the Woofs of the Week segment. That's the best you can get out of me tonight, sir.
Good.
Oh.
In the bear community, if you find a fella attractive, you woof at him. And we do something very similar where we woof at something that may be a comic book or comic book related, or it might be a film or a TV program, maybe a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'm doing my best, folks, doing my best. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
My woof of the week is not a TV show or a movie. It is actually a comic book. But one that we've all kind of probably read a billion times, and that is The Sandman, issue number 19. It has just been remastered, and people say, well, what do you mean remastered? The colors. Colors have been remastered. Now, I know this has been put out. This issue's been put out in different collections. The way I first read it was the way, essentially, that it originally appeared in the floppy single issues when it was first collected. There were a lot of issues with issues on the issue. With the line work. There seemed to be some lightness in the line work. Some of the colors looked a little bit faded and washed out. So it wasn't necessarily, the best, but at the same time, it was also, kind of the era. Like, I wasn't expecting bright, massive colors with the paper stock that they had at the time. But apparently last year at Heroes Con, Steve Oliff had the original color masters. And was, he met up with Charles Vess, who was at the con, as well as Jeff Smith and a couple other people. And they were talking about it. And he was like, hey, I've got the color masters. Why don't we apply them and put them out? And less than a year later, we've got Sandman number 19 remastered. And, the story alone is enough that makes me cry every single time. And really, it's just an interesting retelling of Midsummer Night's Dream, but from the perspective of Shakespeare's company performing Midsummer Night's Dream for the actual fairy court. So if you weren't familiar with the story, it's just beautifully written, beautifully laid out. And the artwork is perfect by Charles Vess. And with the new colors, and some people were saying, oh, I don't really know what the difference in the colors are. If you were to put these side by side with, if you were reading the original issues or the original collections, you would definitely see a very marked difference. It's much brighter. Colors are richer. The line work is clearer. And it just, to me, I think it was just a beautiful way to represent this. And so, I recommend it if you want to read it. If you don't know anything about Sandman and you just want to pick up a random issue just for fun, why not pick up Sandman number 19 remastered?
That's in my box when it gets to me. And you throw out a name there, and was wondering, have we gotten any update on how Jeff Smith is doing?
No, I haven't heard anything, unfortunately.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, he didn't have anything to do with this book. I just to say, other than the discussion,
yeah.
he was present when he was a man in the room.
Okay, David, do you have anything that you want to offer as a wolf of the week?
I mean, just the shell shock of the latest episode of X-Men. I can't. Wow.
Yep.
Blankly at the wall.
Watched it just before we got on the air.
Oh, that was smart.
Yeah.
Very, very smart.
I was already yeah.
Oh, it was like, it wasn't just like 1 or 2 hard left turns. It was just like 17, and I get that these are probably like 35-year-old plot points that are just like hitting me in the face now, but still, wow.
Oh, they turned this. Yeah, no, it was a thing.
Yeah.
That's all. I can't comment further without
feelings were felt.
Yeah.
It is a kick in the teeth.
Yeah. Okay, over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your wolf of the week?
Yeah, so my wolf of the week, much like my Geek Get, is musical based, but this one is actually going out to a very, very, very good friend of mine, my buddy Jeremy Weldon, and his band, Taylor Deranged. Local to Arkansas, they're up in Northwest Arkansas. This is a new band for him. He's been in bands on and off, forever. If you guys remember talking about my buddy Jib, who passed away a few years ago, they were in several bands together. Been in my life for a long time. He's a great guy. So his band Taylor Deranged is super cool. They're metal. They have a front. Their singer is a woman who is just awesome. She owns the stage. She has an amazing presence and she has an amazing voice. But like I said, they're new. They're trying to do their own thing and they're trying to break out. They, like a lot of folks, are using TikTok to do it. They have a cover of Body Shop. The Sam Smith song. And it's a metal cover of Body Shop, and it's amazing. And they put it on TikTok, and in like a day got like 8,000 views and 1,300 likes and stuff like that. So, for a smaller band that's just coming together, kind of a big moment. So go check out Taylor Deranged, find them on TikTok or Facebook or the Insta and all of that stuff, and check their stuff out. It's really good. I'm hoping they're going to hit the studio soon and get some of their new songs put out to where we can hear the studio versions and not the stage versions are great, but just studio stuff is where you're going to hear the magic really happen. And then not necessarily a wolf of the week, but one of the formative people in my early 20s passed away this past week. My friend Mike McQuan, he was a year younger than I am. And so just found out this news. So I want to send some love out to all of our college group, all of our friends, and then to his family as well. It was unexpected to say the least. Just hurt. So just send lots of love. And I'm a person who feels things really hard, especially for my friends. So, and just want to shout out that look, if I consider you a friend, I love you. It's just that, and that goes to everybody who's on this show as well. I love you guys, and I really appreciate that you're in my life. And so, let's keep that going.
Okay, well, something I'm going to keep going is dedicating a wolf of the week to a friend of mine, if I may. And Steve, I have some graphics for you. My friend Candy Cobb has opened up an Etsy store, and she's also opened an artfronts.com site, which you can access from Candace Cobb Art. Sorry, Candace. Hold on. I thought I had this. I thought I had this all. There's a few ways to get there. Candace Gray Cobb Arts.com or Candace Cobb.artstorefronts.com or Etsy under her name. And she's putting up her watercolors for sale, both the originals and fine art prints. The first one we saw was marbles. There are some other examples here. Steve, if you can keep going there, this is a beautiful work called Stripes. And she will also do a portrait of your dog. So we have that. And then just some other beautiful landscapes that she's put together there. Just some really beautiful work. I've known Candy, I'm trying to think, either just shy of 25 years or a little over 25 years when we were both doing theater up in Northern Jersey. And I'm just so happy that she's following this path and getting her artwork out there. Some really, really beautiful work. So you can check those sites out, and naturally through our points of contact, we'll have those links up in the episode notes and some other resources. Yay.
And look, at the end of to end this, wolf to David and Nottingham and the wrapping up this amazing thing and for hanging out with us, like, fucking wolf to you, man. I mean, and also just actually
let's do the Brian. Let's do the Brian. Yeah.
I mean, and not just a wolf for your work, but just a wolf to objectify you because you are very wolfy. So.
Yes, fully objectified.
Thank you guys.
Well,
Seriously.
you're
Thank you
welcome
for joining us.
Yeah. So thank you again.
I always have a great time. So
we're very much looking forward to what you can't talk about.
Yes.
All right, we're wrapping this one up. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the X and the Blue Sky, right?
Yeah.
We're on Blue Sky.
Yeah.
And the Instagram. Sorta.
I've got to do a better job.
Some of it's me too, baby. As Comic Book Bears, you can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. If you want to listen to us, you can do so by accessing us through Apple Podcasts, through many of the other podcasting platforms, including a new one where we've had amazing download numbers, YouTube Music, now that Google Podcasts went the way of the dodo.
I have to say, Google Podcasts going away was really interesting because we barely knew it. It hasn't been around for that long. And then they just went ahead and dumped it. And now that we put everything up on YouTube Music, you can go and find us. The one thing that's a little confusing for listeners, if you are an audio listener, they kind of combine everything with our video page. So you can get all of our old live episodes on YouTube, and also by clicking through the channel, you can access our podcast episodes all the way back to episode number 1, along with other.
I think the easiest way for people, if you want to tell them, they can just hit the live button, and all of the video casts will come up. And it's also nice to see that though we're getting the numbers from YouTube Music, we're not necessarily getting them from YouTube. But we can see from the views that some of the videos we've had since we put up the YouTube Music episodes have, gone up by like 400, 500% in the views. So thank you for that. That's kind of cool as well.
Definitely.
So, all right. Again, we're the Comic Book Bears podcast. My name is Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
You're going to hear Woof and an Explosion if you're listening to the audio version. We'll be back in about 2 weeks. Take care, everyone.
Bye. Woof. Boom.